हरे कृष्णा। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा. So we welcome you all again to the fourth day of this course, self-evaluation tools on the path of bhakti. This is part 1. So I thank you very much for continuing to participate in this discussion. Of course, it's not in the form of a discussion, but nevertheless, hopefully you are getting some tangible benefit from the teachings of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur through this book Madhurya Kadambini. So today I'll start with a very quick recap of what we have seen till now, just touching the topics from the first day on, and then what we saw yesterday little elaborately we will do a recap and then start today's discussion. So we discussed on the first day, we started with the first shower. As I told you before, this book Madhurya Kadambini has 8 chapters and each chapter is called a shower, the shower of nectar. Prathama Amrita Vrishti. That's what we have been seeing, we have seen in the first few days. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur started with the Mangalacharan, where he glorified Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy as the Mahamadhurya Kadambini, the cloud bank of nectar. And then he thanked Srila Rupa Goswami for compiling a literature like Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu and other such books, so that common devotees can also understand the concept of rasa. Then he started with the book with this topic, that how the highest understanding of absolute truth is actually Akhila Rasamrita Murti, the personification of all the rasas, all the spiritual rasas, that is Krishna. Then we discussed on this theme of how the Supreme Lord is all independent, and similarly his supreme energy, Bhakti Devi, she is also supremely independent. She is also self-manifest without the need for any other support. And then in this theme we discussed on how one receives the seed of devotion. We had an elaborate discussion on this topic of how we discussed and explored various options through which one gets the seed of devotion, and we also tried to understand what is this seed of devotion and all those details we discussed. We had an elaborate discussion on this and finally concluded that one receives the seed of devotion through the agency of the devotee, and the devotee shares it out of compassion, and that compassion stems from the devotional practice of that particular devotee. So in this way we understood the verse Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhaktilata Bij, Brahmanda Brahmite Kone Bhagyavan Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhaktilata Bij, like that. Then we continued on this topic of how bhakti is not caused by any other process. It is not caused by, only very superficially it seems like sometimes some shastric statements seem to indicate that karma or jnana or tapasya or charity, they may sometimes seem to cause bhakti, but we saw that such statements are not conclusive statements, and such statements generally refer to the sattvika bhakti or the mixed devotional service, where that bhakti acts as the assistant of karma, jnana or yoga. Such kind of bhakti can be achieved through these processes, but pure devotional service, uttama bhakti, ananya bhakti, cannot be achieved through any of these other processes. It is completely ahaituki. And then we also saw the other meaning of such statements is that when charity refers to providing charity to Krishna, his temples, his Vaishnavas, or yajna refers to performing the Sankirtan yajna, or other in, or vrata refers to Ekadashi vrata, and tapasya refers to Bogadityaga Krishnasya hetave, performing some austerities, giving up material sense gratification for the pleasure of Krishna. So in this way, all these individual tapa, jnana, tapa, dana, etc., all of that become a limb of devotional service. So therefore, in that sense, when one understands, then the statement that all of this leads to bhakti is not incongruent, because they all are limbs of bhakti only. So bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya. So that would not contradict the ahaituki nature of bhakti. Then we discussed on this, I am sorry, there is a mistake here. The next theme that we discussed was, even though bhakti is not caused by any other process, but bhakti acts as the means of supporting all the other processes. We saw how bhakti supports karma. Tyaktva swadharmam charanambujam harer bhajan apakvo atapatet tato yadi. In such verses we saw how bhakti supports karma, how bhakti supports jnana, how bhakti supports yoga. So without the support of bhakti, karma, jnana, yoga cannot function. They cannot bestow any result to the practitioner. And then we saw, despite this process of bhakti being such an exalted path, interestingly it does not depend on purity and faith of the practitioner. This we had an elaborate discussion on this. How all the other processes depend on the purity of heart of the practitioner, at least to some degree or other. But the practice of bhakti is not dependent on, to start the process of bhakti, purity of heart is not a prerequisite. Kirata hunandra pulinda pulkasha abira shumba yavanaha kasadaya ye anyecha papa yadapa shreyashraya shuddyanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha. However completely degraded all these people may be, however sinful, whatever may be the degree of sinful propensities and inclinations they may have, if they sincerely surrender to a devotee who has surrendered to the lotus feet of Krishna, they have full scope of purifying their heart and progressing on the path of bhakti. So bhakti is not dependent on purity. Bhakti is not even dependent on faith. Even though faith in the process heralds the beginning of the devotional life of a devotee, but even before getting that faith, when one performs some limbs of devotion without faith, it acts as a building block for building that faith in the form of Agyat Sukriti. This also we had an elaborate discussion about what the meaning of Agyat Sukriti is, how it is accumulated through the mercy of Vaishnavas, Mahat Kripa, Satam Kripa, Mahat Seva, then it leads to Agyat Sukriti, and how that Agyat Sukriti accumulates over many lifetimes to transform into Shraddha. Like that we discussed. Then the next theme that we discussed was, sometimes in scriptures it may seem like bhakti is playing second fiddle to jnana, karma or yoga. That does not make bhakti inferior to karma, jnana, yoga, but it just indicates the compassionate nature of Bhakti Devi, that she wants to support karma, jnana and yoga. Just like Vamanadev appeared as the younger brother of Indra, the son of Aditi. Just because he appeared as the younger brother of Indra does not mean constitutionally Vamanadev is inferior to Indra. Indra is a Jivatma, whereas Vamanadev is the Vishnu Tattva, an avatar of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But just out of his causeless mercy, he came to support Indra, because Indra was a devotee. So therefore, even though sometimes it may seem like bhakti is playing second fiddle to karma, jnana and yoga, one should not consider that bhakti is inferior to karma or jnana or yoga. This was the 8th theme that we discussed the other day. And then we concluded by saying, therefore only an animal would reject such an exalted path of bhakti. Kovaina seveta vina naretaram. Who would be that person who would reject such an exalted path of bhakti? Vina nara itaram. Unless he is an animalistic person. So in this way we concluded the first theme, the first chapter or the Pratama Amrita Vrishti, which spoke about the super excellence of bhakti over all the other paths. That's why there was a constant repetition of bhakti, 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 glorification. It might have been boring for some people. Why there is so much bhakti, 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 same thing. But the point is, this is spoken to the devotees so that they get complete confidence in their practice. What is this path that they have stumbled upon? Literally the living entity has stumbled upon the path of bhakti. He has no qualification. For no reason of that particular, for no qualification of that particular living entity, he has literally stumbled upon the path of bhakti. As some of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, what is our qualification that we have taken up to this path of bhakti? Prabhupada said, you don't have any qualification. I have created your qualification. That is the nature of bhakti. The receiver does not get any credit for receiving that bhakti. It is purely mercy. So that's why we discussed the fifth option of independent will of the receiver. So one may say, yeah, the independent will of the receiver chose to receive, that's why he got bhakti. We had one understanding of that, but it is like telling, look, it is like a beggar telling, oh, I have decided to marry the queen of, the princess of England. So I am just ready, just one small glitch is there, just that I have not asked the princess whether she wants to marry me. So if a marriage has to happen between a beggar from India and the princess of England, is it like if the beggar says, I am ready, is it that 90% of the job is done? Such a marriage can happen only in his imagination. So similarly, when the receiving living entity cannot take any credit for receiving bhakti, it is absolute mercy only and nothing else. Mercy of the devotee who is sharing it. So therefore, as devotees who have received this exalted path of bhakti by chance actually, by sheer mercy, we should be happy to hear about the glorification of that path again and again. It should give us great joy and confidence. It should drive away all kinds of hopelessness that we might have about our practice of bhakti, about bhakti. So therefore, one should not feel again and again there is repetition of bhakti, 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 glorification of bhakti. We should actually become more and more eager to hear about the glorification of bhakti, because that's the path we are following and it should give us great confidence. So that's why Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur starts this chapter, starts this book by including a chapter on establishing the super excellence of bhakti over all the other paths. And then yesterday we started the Dvitiya Amrita Vrishti, the second shower of nectar, in which the theme was the development of bhakti from Shraddha to Sadhu Sangha to Bhajana Kriya, and the various divisions of Bhajana Kriya. That's what we started discussing yesterday. So in this, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur starts this second chapter by telling, oh, this work is not a refutation of Mayavad, because as we saw yesterday, he had compiled a similar book, not a similar book, a book with a similar name called Aishwarya Kadambini, in which he compiled a list of refutations of the popular Mayavadi understanding. So therefore, one should not think, seeing the name of the book Madhurya Kadambini, one should not think, oh, This is part 2 of that Mayavad Khandan, or part 2 of Aishwarya Kadambini. Therefore, he is clarifying here that, oh, this book is not a work on refutation of Mayavad, like that. And then the second theme that we started, this elaborate theme of the two types of bhakti, Raga and Vaidhi. So Raganuga and Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. So we saw that how both these Vaidhi and Raganuga sadhana bhakti have the elements of Anyabhilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadhyanavritam, Anukulyena Krishnana Sheelanam Bhaktiruttama. So it has the elements of these four elements, two Mukhya Lakshanas and two Gauna Lakshanas, two primary characteristics and two secondary characteristics. The primary characteristics being Anukulyena, having a very favorable attitude of pleasing Krishna, and Krishna Anushilanam, and that favorable attitude should transform into some practical service using mind, body and words to Krishna. And then on top of that, if such a favorable service with a favorable attitude is accompanied by Anya Abhilashita Shunyam, having no other desire other than the desire to please Krishna, having only Krishna as the goal and no other secondary goals, and if that practice of bhakti is not covered by the processes of karma, jnana or yoga, then such a practice of bhakti is called Uttama Bhakti. And Uttama Bhakti can be practiced at the stage of sadhana, Uttama Bhakti can be practiced at the stage of bhava, and Uttama Bhakti can be practiced at the stage of prema. Then we saw that this bhakti, when it starts especially at the stage of sadhana, what is sadhana bhakti? We saw Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhavasa sadhana bida. Engaging one's senses in the activities of Navada Bhakti with achieving Bhava Bhakti as the goal. With achievement of relationship with Krishna as a goal, when one engages his senses and mind in the activities of Krishna consciousness, then it is called as sadhana bhakti. And that sadhana bhakti can have two types of impetus or inspiration. One inspiration can come from the rules of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, that is called as Vaidhi Bhakti, and the other impetus or stimulus for engaging the senses in Krishna conscious activities with bhava as the goal. The second stimulus can come from raga. Raga means a spontaneous attraction for following in the footsteps of the Vrajavasis, love for Krishna. So this, however, whether it may be Vaidhi or Raganuga, both these kinds of sadhana bhakti, when practiced, almost immediately start manifesting two kinds of effects. The first effect is called as Kleshagni and the second is called as Shubhada. Kleshagni means, Klesha means suffering and Gna means to destroy. So Kleshagni means it destroys suffering. So we had an elaborate discussion on this subject matter yesterday. So as we saw, the seed of bhakti is faith. When that faith is nourished by the water of hearing and chanting and other such limbs of devotional service, slowly that seed sprouts into a seedling and then a sapling, and then in that sapling, first two leaves start unfurling, two fresh green leaves, and those two fresh green leaves are compared to this Kleshagni and Shubhada. And if you have seen a leaf, the top portion is smooth and the bottom portion is rough. So the top portion is called as Raganuga sadhana and the bottom portion is called as Vaidhi sadhana. The bottom portion being the rough portion, Vaidhi sadhana is compared to that because there is spontaneity has not yet manifest. In the top portion is soft, it is compared to Raganuga sadhana because there is the element of spontaneity. We saw the example of the difference between mother and nurse. This we saw yesterday. So coming back to Kleshagni, so we saw that we saw the explanation of Raganuga and Ragatmika Bhakti before we started Kleshagni. In order to understand the difference between Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And then we also saw about the practice of Raganuga Sadhana, Seva Sadhaka Rupena Siddha Rupena Chatrahi Tad Bhava Lipsuna Karya Vrajalokanu. How this Raganuga Sadhana is practiced, at what stage it can be practiced, what is the prerequisite for Raganuga Sadhana, how Nishtha is a prerequisite, all of it, even though it is not directly a part of our discussion here. But if I just say Raganuga and then move on without explaining what it is, then it would be very difficult to relate to whether is it relevant for us, are we supposed to practice it or are we not supposed to practice it. All such kinds of questions would come. Therefore, I took a slight detour to explain what this Vaidhi and Raganuga are, even though it is not completely within the scope of Madhurya Kadambini. The details are not discussed, because as we discussed last time, this Madhurya Kadambini is an elaboration on 2 verses of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which talks about Adav Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangha Tata Bhajana Kriya and so on. So which comes towards the end of the eastern section of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So which means the author has a reasonable expectation of expecting maybe you should have already read at least the eastern section of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So therefore he does not elaborate on certain subject matters, especially about the details of Vaidhi Sadhana practice or the details of Raganuga Sadhana practice or an elaboration of what it is and all that. So that's why we took a slight detour in order to make this subsequent subject matter relevant to the audience. We took a slight detour and discussed little bit from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Then we understood what was Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, and then we started our discussion on Kleshagni. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he acknowledges that suffering does include, is predominantly prarabdha and aprarabdha. But having said that, we will just address the root cause of the suffering. The root cause of the suffering is committing sinful activity, which is also not the root. The sinful activity is inspired by sinful desires, and sinful desires are manifest due to sinful vasanas. So therefore, klesha actually refers to cause of suffering rather than just the mere manifestation of suffering. Because if you root out the cause of that suffering, then the manifestation will also stop. So therefore, we discussed about kleshas, and we saw that klesha is of 5 types: avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha and abhinivesh. We discussed this. And we saw that how these 5 kinds, avidya is sinful vasanas, and asmita is identification with particular body, and raga is attachment to certain things which we liked, and dvesha is hatred of certain things which we did not like, and abhinivesh is completely becoming absorbed, thinking about things we like, how we can acquire things we like, how we can keep the things we like, how we can avoid other people from getting the things that we like. This is raga abhinivesh. And dvesha abhinivesh is how I can get away from this thing, how I can ensure that I will never come in touch with it, how I can ensure that I destroy this thing which I don't like. So in this way, when our mind keeps on getting absorbed in raga and dvesha, raga and dvesha, raga and dvesha, this keeps our mind so absorbed in the material world by creating various kinds of material emotions in the form of joy, hankering, and distress, lamentation. So it's like completely being part of a very absorbing soap opera. So you are so much a part of it that literally you are crying for the actors who are on the soap opera, and you are so absorbed, you feel almost like you are a part of it. But this is Krishna's soap opera. It is not like ordinary soap operas of people of this world. And he orchestrates it in such a way that we are so completely absorbed that we have absolutely no idea that we are not this body and we do not belong to this material world, and we are a part and parcel of Krishna. And this soap opera has been going on since time immemorial, and the conditioned living entities without the assistance of devotees have never been able to figure it out since time immemorial. That we are part of this virtual reality. This is not reality at all. That's what Krishna mentions. Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavrita. I am covered by this curtain of Yogamaya. And what is that curtain of Yogamaya we tried to understand yesterday? It was actually this avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha and abhinivesh. And how this, from avidya, this abhinivesh is created through the agency of chitta, buddhi, mana and ahankar, who all have access to this vasanas or the avidya. We had an elaborate discussion on this yesterday. And as a practical application of this, we discussed the experiment conducted by Pavlov with that mouse in the mouse trap. And we tried to understand that how, when such a kind of situation of raga abhinivesh and dvesha abhinivesh is created in the life of conditioned souls, they completely get absorbed in it, and even though there is an availability of a scope for higher benefit, the absorption in the lower raga and dvesha keeps them completely busy, and they don't even observe or see the availability of a higher reality. We saw through this interesting experiment conducted by Pavlov. So, and then we saw that how this science of this curtain of Yogamaya is very beautifully described by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavrita modoyam nabhijanati loko ma majamavyayam. And then he says, this is a one-way curtain. I can see you, but you can't see me. Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mamtu veda na kaschana. And then he describes in the next verse what this curtain is made of. Icha dvesha samuttena dvandva mohena bharata sarva bhutani sammoham sargeyanti parantapa. Icha is raga, dvesha is dvesha, and this leads to dvandva moha. I like it, I don't like it. And then further this leads to sarva bhutani sammoham. Sammoham is abhinivesh, complete absorption. When one completely becomes absorbed in likes and dislikes and a life which is centered around likes and dislikes, then completely that person becomes bewildered, and in that bewilderment he is not able to see Krishna. So therefore, what is the means of getting him out of that bewildered state of virtual reality? Krishna gives the solution in the next verse. Yesham tu antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam. If somehow or other that person starts practicing the path of bhakti, then that path of bhakti does cheto darpanamarjanam, cleanses his heart of all those past vasanas. When the vasanas are wiped out, then chitta, buddhi, mana, ahankar do not have their food. It is just like if you don't water a field filled with grass and weeds. If you don't water it, and if it is summer time, they will automatically dry up. Their roots will completely die. They will automatically dry up. Similarly, when you have a system by which the vasanas can be wiped out, then chitta, buddhi, mana and ahankar will not generate material emotions based on the sensory signals which is accumulated by eyes, ears, nose, skin and tongue. That is, when there is no material emotion created, there is no binding to this material world. And when there is no binding to this material world, the mind is free to think of Dridhavrata Bhajan. Bhajante Mam Dridhavrata. So then they can focusedly worship Krishna, and by focusedly worshipping Krishna, they can know Krishna, they can know themselves in relationship with Krishna, and how they can re-establish that relationship with Krishna and go back home, back to Godhead, and live a life of eternity in joy. So this principle, so beautifully described by Krishna in this Bhagavad Gita, we tried to understand in the context of kleshas, the 5 kinds of kleshas: avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha and abhinivesh. And kleshagni ultimately means not just to destroy the prarabdha karma and aprarabdha karma, but to actually destroy all the kleshas, starting with avidya. So, and avidya, we are put in touch with this virtual reality. Krishna puts the curtain because the living entity chose to live a life separate from Krishna. Bhayam dvitiya abhiniveshatasyat ishadapetasya viparyayo asmriti. Because the living entity became ishadapetasya, because he desired to to turn his face away from Krishna, he desired to live a life without Krishna's interference. Krishna, with a heavy heart, wanted to facilitate that desire of the living entity. Not wanting to force himself upon that living entity, he with a heavy heart, he put the curtain of Yogamaya so that the living entity at least will have that desire fulfilled. Then he creates this whole system of avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha and abhinivesh, and the living entity starts living in a life of virtual reality. This we saw elaborately yesterday. And then we saw some examples from Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita where the proof for how bhakti destroys aprarabdha karma, how bhakti destroys prarabdha karma, how bhakti destroys the sinful desires, and how bhakti destroys the sinful vasanas within the heart. We discussed this. So this is like an elaborate overview of what we have seen till now. Today we will start discussing about the second prominent quality that start manifesting during the sadhana bhakti stage of one's practice of bhakti, which is called as Shubhada. Shubhada means, Shubha means auspicious, Da means to give. So Shubhada means practice of bhakti bestows auspiciousness on all the practitioners. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says, as both types of bhakti eradicate klesha, similarly both of them bestow Shubha also, or auspiciousness. Shubha, he primarily defines Shubha as qualities. Disinterest in material affairs, interest in the Supreme Lord, favorable attitude towards the service of the Lord, mercy, truthfulness, forgiveness, simplicity, equanimity, fortitude. These kind of very favorable qualities start developing when a person starts practicing bhakti. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarvair gunains tatra sumasate sura. But as we saw in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami gives a little more elaborate understanding of what this Shubhada is. He says, Shubhani prinanam sarvajagatam anurakta sadgunaha sukam iti adini akyatani manishinaha. He says, Shubha means 4 things. One is Jagat Prinanam, affection for all the Jivatmas. He becomes very compassionately disposed towards all the living entities. Ishware Prema Tadadineshu Maitri, Balisheshu Kripa. Very compassionate disposition towards all the living entities. And Sarva Jagatam Anurakta. He becomes very attractive to all the living entities. All the living entities become attracted to that person. As it is mentioned about the 6 Goswamis. Dhira Adhira Janapriyau Priyakarau Nirmatsarau Pujitau. Dhira Adhira Janapriyau. They become very attractive to the gentle and the ruffians alike. And Sadgunadi Pradatvam. Sadgunadi Pradatvam means how practice of bhakti bestows all good qualities. And Sukha Pradatvam. Practice of bhakti gradually bestows higher and higher realms of happiness. Three types of happiness: Vaishaikam, Brahmam, and Aishwaram. In the early stages of bhakti, practice of bhakti gives happiness on the level of material pleasures. And when one progresses further to the stage of ruchi, asakti and bhava, it bestows a kind of happiness which is on par with the bliss of impersonal liberation. And then when one reaches higher stages of bhava and prema, it bestows a kind of bliss which is which in comparison to which the bliss of Brahman becomes insignificant. It pales into insignificance. Moksha Lagutakrit. And it is called as Sandrananda Visheshatma. Sandrananda, a kind of condensed, special kind of spiritual bliss is experienced by the practitioner. So, there are a few examples that are given, but we had discussed these examples before also. Yasya prasanno bhagavan gunair maitriyadibir harihi tasmai namanti bhutani nimnam apaiva swayam. How for a person who has managed to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all the living entities naturally become attracted to that person, just as water naturally flows from a higher point to a lower point, from a higher elevation to a lower elevation. This is in relation to the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj, who was severely chastised, criticized, insulted by his stepmother Suruchi. When he tried, all he tried was he tried to sit on the lap of his own father. So therefore, and a 5-year-old boy was such severely criticized and chastised and insulted by Suruchi. But after 6 months, when he meets the Supreme Lord, pleases the Supreme Lord, receives many benedictions, including Krishna Prem, when he comes back, the same Suruchi goes, embraces Dhruva Maharaj and cries tears of affection and love. So what has transformed Suruchi? Suruchi has not transformed, but Dhruva Maharaj has transformed. He is no longer the same 5-year-old Dhruva Maharaj who wanted to sit on the lap of his father. Dhruva Maharaj had gained the lap of the Supreme Father Krishna. He had managed to please the Supreme Father. So as a result of that, he became so attractive even to the most envious person like Suruchi, who was so enviously disposed towards Dhruva Maharaj. So this is the proof that practice of bhakti bestows all good qualities, including that supreme attractiveness. And then another verse we saw, Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarvair gunais tatra samasate suraha harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manoratena sati davato bahihi. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana. Where there is akinchana bhakti, where there is ananya bhakti, where there is practice of uttama bhakti, sarvair gunais tatra samasate suraha. All the good qualities manifest in such a person. Harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna. But whereas for a person who is not a devotee, where is the good quality in him? Manoratena asati dhavato bahihi. Such a person who chases after temporary material objects with the desire for material pleasure. He is traveling on the chariot of his mind, quickly chasing after temporary material pleasures. So, but if you see, we many times quote this verse, but this is a verse which is very difficult to defend, to explain and defend, because this is opposed to common observation. It is opposed to common understanding and observation. Because we do see devotees who are not endowed with very pleasant qualities and who are filled with many unpleasant qualities. And we do see many non-devotees filled with wonderful qualities, very attractive qualities. So how are you going to explain this verse? Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarvair gunais tatra samasati sura. So this needs a very clear understanding. This verse needs to be understood very clearly. So if you see a devotee, if you see a non-devotee who is having very wonderful pleasant qualities, he is very gentlemanly, very soft spoken, very kind, very compassionate, all those qualities may be there, but all those qualities are in all likelihood just a product of mode of goodness, are just a product of his upbringing. So whereas a devotee, he may have a very strong Rajoguni and Tamoguni background, very severely conditioned by the modes of passion and ignorance. But having taken up to the path of bhakti, he has received the pure devotional value system. So he knows what is the right thing to do. Whatever is favorable for bhakti, I should do it. And what should be avoided? Whatever is unfavorable for bhakti, I should try to avoid doing it. But in trying to act on this platform, the devotee knows that his conditioning baggage, his material bad habits and all of that which he is carrying into the path of bhakti will act as a major obstacle. If someone has grown up as a very cruel-hearted person, very insensitive person, very unclean, dirty upbringing, then as soon as one takes up to bhakti, it is not that overnight those inclinations will vanish. It will take some time. In fact, in the next chapter we will see that these anarthas get destroyed stage by stage, one after another, after another, after another. Slowly it will get destroyed. So therefore, here is a person who is unable to be gentle, unable to be very calm, composed, soft spoken. He may be filled with harsh speech, rudeness and all that, but he is sincerely trying to please Krishna. He is sincerely trying to make this struggle. Oh, I should try to not act rudely because it will be displeasing to Guru, it will be displeasing to Krishna. I should not try to speak harshly because it will be displeasing to Krishna, displeasing to Guru. He is trying, but in trying he may fail. Because in a tug of war, if one team is strong, even though the other team is sincerely trying, still the other team may get pulled by the first team. Similarly, even though this person is sincerely trying, but the conditioning may be so severe. Whereas a materialistic person, a non-devotee, even though he may have very good qualities, but that good quality is still on the platform of the modes only, raga and dvesha only. Like I'll give you an example, that one of my friends in the ashram here, His Grace Madhav Gopal Prabhu, so he grew up in a colony in a part of Mumbai, Dombivli. So in that colony, he had many friends from his childhood, and one of those friends was his neighbor, a girl, whom he met after many years after joining the ashram. So both of them had taken a different path in their lives, and they were meeting after many years, and they were inquiring about each other's life, and both of them were quite surprised meeting each other. So she was asking him, oh, how did you join the ashram and all that. And he was asking her, oh, how you are doing, where do you stay and all that. And this very girl, when they used to grow up, she grew up in a pure vegetarian family, where all Brahmanas, properly practicing all, vegetarianism and all that. So while playing, even if one of her friends used to say egg or meat, even the sound of that she used to feel very awkward, because she was not used to eating that. And the smell of meat or anything was intolerable for her. She used to feel like vomiting. But then Madhav Gopal Prabhu went to IIT and she went to a different college. And after IIT, he joined the ashram. And in college, this girl fell in love with another boy and eventually married that boy. And that boy was not a vegetarian. So the deal was that he would not, if he wanted to eat meat, he should eat outside only. Nothing should come inside the home. So it was agreed upon and it continued for a while. But after some time, she felt very bad for him. She said, okay, you can purchase meat from outside, come home and eat, no problem. Then she again felt bad. I'm very, I should be little more considerate. So she said, okay, you can cook meat at home and eat, no problem. But I will not cook. And then after some time, she wanted to be little more considerate. She said, okay, I will cook it for you and you can eat, but I will not eat. I said, fine, very good. Then later she wondered, how would I know whether I have cooked a tasty meal or not if I don't taste it? So let me start tasting it. So she started tasting it. And over a period of time, she started liking it. Then she said, okay, why should I be deprived of all the joy? I will also start eating. She started eating. And then she started liking it so much that she started trying out various different recipes. And then eventually, she started writing blogs on the internet, sharing her newer and newer recipes of all these meat products. So, you see here is a person who apparently had all the good qualities of no meat eating, non-violence and all that. But that no meat eating, non-violence was practiced on the platform of not a value system, but it was practiced on the platform of the three modes. She grew up in a very Sattvaguni family, a family which was filled with mode of goodness. So it was natural that these kind of foodstuffs were not very attractive. But when post-marriage, when she started living with a person who had totally different habits, those habits started influencing. And because there was no value system to protect that person's choices, therefore slowly she started, when more and more Rajoguni impressions she started accumulating, she shifted, her choices changed. And she became a compulsive blogger. That is her entertainment. Try out newer and newer recipes and share it with the internet world. So this is the position of a person who is harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna. Mano ratena asati davato bhai. Because she is sitting on the chariot of mind. In the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a description of the chariot of the mind. This is the chariot of King Puranjan. And it is mentioned, this Puranjan is an allegorical character. And it is mentioned there that the wheels of this chariot is made of raga and dvesha, likes and dislikes. So she was a vegetarian because of like. She didn't eat meat because of dislike. She didn't choose to be a vegetarian because of some value system which said actually eating meat is bad. Whereas you may have a person coming from a meat eating family taking up to Krishna consciousness, he may try to avoid meat eating because the scriptures say that Krishna does not like that his devotee eat meat and the Guru does not like. So he may try his best, but sometimes he may succumb also if he is not in a protected environment. Krishna says, such a person who is succumbing to these kind of unmentionable activities while trying to please me is much more dear to me than a person who is doing all the so-called right things with absolutely no concern for pleasing me. Therefore, harava bhaktasya kuto mahad guna. So the chariot is running on the wheels of raga and dvesha of this person, material person. So when the chariot is filled with weapons, the weapons are compared to the three modes, the vasanas. When the chariot is filled with sattvaguni vasanas, then raga and dvesha will, because the chariot is running on raga and dvesha, it will move in the right direction. Ahimsa, satyam, asteyam and all that. Whereas when the environment changes, it becomes more and more mode of passion and mode of ignorance environment. When the person starts accumulating many such vasanas, then the wheels are still raga and dvesha only. So it will start moving in a different direction. That very same person who used to hate meat, now he is uncontrollably addicted to meat eating. So this is the case. So therefore, whereas a devotee, the chariot of his wheels is not made of raga and dvesha. It is made of anukulyasya sankalpo pratikulyasya varjanam. What is pleasing to Krishna, what is displeasing to Krishna. But his chariot may also have some rajoguni and tamoguni vasanas which may pull the chariot in the opposite direction. Whereas the wheels will very faithfully try to run in the direction of lotus feet of Krishna. Whatever is anukul, I will do. Whatever is pratikul, I will reject. So Krishna says, such a struggling devotee is so much dear to me. But a sattvaguni person who is only incidentally doing the right things because of the right kind of vasanas, he is not very dear to Krishna. Because he is not trying to please Krishna. Therefore, one should not say actually that I feel more comfortable and happy in the association of non-devotees who may be very kind, compassionate, generous than devotees who are not very rude, insensitive, harsh speaking like that. It means we are not sharing the value system of Krishna. Bhaktya tutosha bhagavan gajayutapaya viprat dvishad gunayutat aravinda naba padaravinda vimukat shvapacham varishtam manye tadarpita mana vachane hitartha pranam punati sakulam natu bhurimana. Prahlad Maharaj says, one may be a Brahmana endowed with all the 12 qualities, wonderful qualities. But if he is not inclined to worship Krishna, all those good qualities are of no use. Because all those good qualities are shanabhangur, they are temporary. The moment the circumstance changes, the moment the environment changes from sattvaguni to rajoguni or tamoguni, because the chariot is still running on the wheels of raga and dvesha, the chariot will go in a different direction. Whereas the Supreme Lord is pleased with bhakti. Therefore, Rupa Goswami says, don't judge a devotee seeing his conditioning. Different people come to devotional service with different levels of conditioning baggage. See his bhakti. Gangambaso na kalubudbuda fena pankair brahmadvavatvam apagachati nanira dharmair. We saw the other day the 6th verse of Nectar of Instruction. Drishtair swabhava janitair vapushascha doshair na prakritatvameha bhakta janasya pashyet. When you see a devotee struggling with his conditioning, see that he is struggling to please Krishna. And Krishna is taking personal responsibility of cleansing the heart of that devotee. So encourage that devotee. If your encouragement is there, that devotee will become such a wonderful devotee very soon. That way you are sharing Krishna's burden. Krishna says, Yoga Kshemam Vahami Aham. I want to carry on my shoulders the responsibility of rectifying that devotee. So as devotees, shouldn't we also help Krishna carrying that burden? So therefore, as devotees, at least as devotees, we should not feel that, oh, this non-devotee is better. He is so much more considerate. He is so much more, he is so much more kind. But this devotee is very rude. But this devotee is rude, but he knows that this rudeness is bad. He knows that this is displeasing to Krishna, and he is trying to please Krishna, sincerely. That is what Krishna sees, and that is what devotees should also learn to see. So that is what this verse is talking about. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarvair gunais tatra samasate sura. So eventually, because Krishna will cleanse the heart of the devotee will develop all those good qualities. It is just a question of time. Whereas this non-devotee, for him to retain all those good qualities, is severely dependent on the circumstances. If he manages to stay in a Sattva-guni environment, there is a chance that he may retain those qualities. But if his circumstances change, he cannot retain those qualities. So therefore, harava bhaktasya kuto mahatguna. None of those qualities are meant for pleasing Krishna. All those qualities are just controlled by the three gunas. Just like for one person, Rajoguna and Tamoguna is controlling them. Another person, Sattva-guna is controlling them. Ultimately, they are controlled by the gunas only. They are not willing to surrender to Krishna. So willingness to surrender to Krishna is what Krishna appreciates. That is Krishna's value system. And as devotees, we should also share Krishna's value system. So Shubhada, we are discussing the aspect of Shubhada, that how this Sadgunadi Pradatvam, it bestows all good qualities. And then Sukha Pradatvam, it also bestows happiness. So the happiness experienced by a devotee in his life is not a product of his punya karma. It is a product of his practice of bhakti. Bhakti has its own way of bestowing happiness to the devotee. The more sincerely he practices, the more happier the person becomes in Krishna consciousness. So this is the third aspect of Shubhada, or the fourth aspect of Shubhada. So therefore, this Kleshagni and Shubhada, they manifest in a practitioner parallelly. So while parallelly he starts losing his bad qualities, and he also starts developing good qualities. But of course, they may not be exactly at same pace. In some people, Anartha Nivritti or Kleshagni may happen faster compared to Shubhada. In some other people, Shubhada may manifest faster than Kleshagni, but more or less they parallelly manifest in a person. So this is about Kleshagni and Shubhada, which start manifesting at the stage of Sadhana Bhakti. Then in the next theme, we will move on to the next theme now, which discusses about the development of Shraddha. We have already seen this discussion before. First, the prospective devotee develops Shraddha or faith based on Mahat Satam Kripa, Mahat Seva and Agyat Sukriti. When accumulated, he develops Shraddha. And what is the meaning of Shraddha? Shraddha means to have firm trust in the import of the scriptures dealing with bhakti. Faith in Bhakti Shastras. This is Shraddha. General acceptance of Shastras is not necessarily, such a person is not necessarily qualified for Bhakti. He must have firm trust in the Bhakti Shastras, especially Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. Shraddha Shabde Vishwasa Kohe Sudrida Nischay Krishna Bhakti Kaile Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. So Shraddha Shabde Vishwasa Kohe Sudrida Nischay. One should have firm trust that just by practice of Bhakti, everything is accomplished. I don't have to perform karma, jnana, yoga, anything else. Just by practice of Bhakti, everything is accomplished. And it also means to have a genuine desire to enthusiastically undertake the activities described in those scriptures. As Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. So the symptom of Shraddha, another symptom of Shraddha is enthusiasm to practice these limbs of devotional service. The more one seems to have enthusiasm to practice these limbs, it's a symptom of his strengthening of his pure devotional faith. So, and this Shraddha one may get by two means. One is called as Swabhaviki, another is called as Balotpadita. So, Swabhaviki means it may come naturally. Naturally means, like for example, like that person, like you see in, you hear many of the stories of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada who actually husband and wife and child, they are standing on the street and doing some business there, and suddenly they see a group of devotees chanting and dancing blissfully, and then they are so enchanted by these devotees, seeing their happy faces. They think, oh, our life has not been so blissful. Let us follow these people and try to find out how they are blissful. So they followed them, moved into the temple and became devotees. No one preached to them. But it was just some seeing the devotees and appreciating them, they accumulated some Agyat Sukriti, and in their previous lives also they must have accumulated some Agyat Sukriti, and then that Agyat Sukriti matures, and without anyone maybe directly preaching to them, they develop that faith. This is called as Swabhaviki Shraddha. And Balotpadita Shraddha does not mean someone forces them on gunpoint and say, you should chant the holy name right now. Not like that. Balotpadita Shraddha means where when the person develops firm trust in a devotee, not because he is a devotee, but because he trusts him as a friend. And at some stage in his life, when that trust becomes very strong, the devotee may say, look, you should consider chanting the holy names, you should consider practicing bhakti. You will become a very happy person. And because this person has firm trust in the benevolence of that devotee friend, he thinks, oh, this person is my well-wisher. He will not tell me something which is wrong. So therefore, let me try what is wrong in trying. So in this way, he may try practicing bhakti. So in this way, he develops faith. This is called as Balotpadita Shraddha, where a devotee, seeing that this person is favorably inclined towards me, utilizes that opportunity to preach to him about the glories of bhakti. So this is called as Balotpadita Shraddha. So these two types of faith. So now, whatever way one may get this faith through Swabhaviki or Balotpadita, the next stage is, as soon as one develops that Shraddha, one feels that in order to progress in devotional life, I need the association of like-minded people. He will seek out Sadhu Sangha. That is a natural byproduct of receiving that seed of faith. So the next comes Sadhu Sangha. However it develops, whether through Swabhaviki or Balotpadita, this Shraddha leads him to take shelter of the lotus feet of a Guru. Adav Guru Padashraya. He feels, I need a guru to guide me. He develops that faith. And inquire from him about the spiritual activities. Saddharma pracha, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu says. Adav Gurupadashraya, Shri Krishna Dikshadi Sikshanam, Vishrambhayana Guror Seva, Saddharma pracha, Sadhu Vartmanu Vartmanam. In this way, the first 5-6 limbs as described in the 64 limbs mentioned in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu are in connection with Guru. So he immediately feels the need for a guru to guide him in his spiritual life. So he approaches that guru, Adav Gurupadashraya. Then Shri Krishna Dikshadi Sikshanam. He receives Diksha and Siksha from the guru. And to express his gratitude to the guru for the association he is getting from him, Vishrambhena Guror Seva, loving service to the guru he renders. Then Saddharma Pracha. He starts inquiring from the guru about Saddharma. Saddharma means bhakti. How should I practice bhakti? How can I overcome these obstacles which are haunting me in my progress in bhakti? Like that he inquires from the guru. And then Sadhu Vartma Anuvartmanam. So then the guru guides him to follow in the footsteps of the various sadhus, the predecessor sadhus and the Vartaman sadhus. He puts that person in the association of those sadhus, and then in their association he also progresses. So by following his instructions, that person obtains good fortune of relationships with affectionate like-minded devotees and the association of realized devotees, sadhu sangha. Srila Rupa Goswami says, Sajatiya ashaye snigde sadhu sangha swatovare. So association means what? Association means Sajatiya ashaye. It must have 4 elements. When those 4 elements are there, then it is association. So of the 64 limbs, Srila Rupa Goswami says, 5 limbs are most potent. You ask any devotee, what are those 5 limbs? He will say, Bhagavatam, holy name, holy dham, and Vaishnavas, and deity worship, holy deities, 5 things. But Rupa Goswami clarifies, the 5 potent limbs are not just that. He elaborates on each one of those 5. He says, association of Vaishnavas. What is association of Vaishnavas? He says, the association must have these 4 elements. Sajatiya ashaye snigde sadhu sangha swatovare. Sajatiya ashaye means it must be like-minded. Like-minded can be understood at different levels. At one level, it could be, he is a devotee, I am a devotee, like-mindedness. Both like to serve Krishna. Little higher, he also likes Shravanam, he is also a God brother, he is also a disciple of the same Guru, I am also a disciple of the same Guru. Next level of Sajatiya ashaye. Higher level, both of us derive nourishment from the same limb of bhakti. Both of us appreciate Shravanam. Both of us appreciate Kirtanam. Both of us appreciate deity worship. One can forge a very good, thick friendship based on this common interest. This is the 3rd level of like-mindedness. 4th level is at the very advanced stage of bhakti, when one identifies his own rasa of relationship with Krishna, then he looks for like-minded association. Meaning, if he is in Sakya Ras, then he will look for another person who will also be similarly in that same rasa, so that they can come together and discuss similar pastimes and feel nourished in each other's association. So these are based on whatever level of devotional service we are in, we have to look for like-minded association for getting mutual nourishment. This is the first aspect of association. The second aspect of association is snigde. Snigde means sneha sambandha, affection. There must be mutual affection between the two. So that is very important. And then the 3rd thing he says is sadhu sangha. 2 people may be like-minded, they may be very affectionate to each other, but the like-mindedness is in coming together and watching cricket match together. And in doing that, they may have very affectionate relationship also. They may buy each other a lot of popcorn and ice cream and gift and come together and watch cricket. So he says, no, Sajati Ashe is important, Snigdhe is important, but it must be Sadhu Sangha also, must be devotees. And Swato Vare means the other person should be more elevated than you. He must be more spiritually, devotionally elevated, or at least it should be a mutually elevating relationship. Both may be equals, but when you come together, spend quality time together, it could be discussing direct Krishna Katha, it could be discussing each one's struggles, it could be discussing each one's success in Krishna consciousness, what they tried out, how they overcame the struggles. At the end of the discussion, both of them should feel mutually elevated in Krishna consciousness, very mutually inspired to practice Krishna consciousness. So if that kind of a relationship is what Rupa Goswami is talking about as being one of the 5 potent limbs. It should have these 4 elements. Sajatiya Ashe Snigdhe Sadhu Sangha Swato Vare. If this is there, this kind of an association is very elevating. Then the second type, the second limb that he talks about is deity worship. Is deity worship one of the most potent limbs? He says no. He says the most potent limb is Shrimurter Angri Sevane Preeti. Preeti means deep affection, deep attraction for serving the lotus feet of the deities. Just deity worship is not one of the 5 potent limbs, but it is a good point to start. When one starts deity worship, slowly by serving the deities, one develops a deep attraction. And when that reaches that level of deep attraction, then the deep attraction to serving the lotus feet of the deities, it becomes a very potent limb, which can very quickly elevate that person. Shri Murter Angri Sevane Preeti. The third is Bhagavatam. Is reading Bhagavatam one of the 5 potent limbs? He says no. He says, Shrimad Bhagavata Arthanam Aswadaihi Rasikaihi Saha. That is a potent limb. What is the meaning? Shrimad Bhagavata Arthanam. The imports of Shrimad Bhagavatam, Aswadaihi. One should relish the imports, the essential teachings of Bhagavatam, the essential characters of Bhagavatam, the essential lessons which are churned out by the Acharyas while explaining Bhagavatam. It should all be relished, not alone, but in the association of like-minded devotees who have great taste for relishing Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavata Arthanam Aswadaihi Rasikaihi Saha. One should relish it in the association of similar bhaktas who have great taste for relishing Srimad Bhagavatam. Then this becomes a very potent limb. So we have seen 3 limbs, 3 potent limbs. It is not just deity worship, but Shri Murter Angri Sevane Preeti. It is not just association of devotees, but it should have the elements of Sajatiya Ashe, Snigdhe, Sadhu Sangha, Swato Vare. And it is not just reading Bhagavatam, but it should be Shrimad Bhagavata Arthanam Aswadaihi Rasikaihi Saha. And then the 4th thing is actually Dhamvas. So he says, visiting a dham is not a potent limb. It is potent, but it is not one of the most potent limbs. So one should visit the dham, Mathura Vas, he says. One should stay in the dham. If it is not possible to physically stay in the dham, one should at least within the heart one should stay in the dham. One should deeply hanker for staying in the dham. One should constantly meditate on the dham. But how is that possible? Gaura Amar Jesabastane Karalo Brahmana Range Sesabastana Heriboami Pranayi Bakata Sange. So, wherever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited during his life, Sesabastana Heriboami, I will try to visit all those places. But how? Pranayi Bakata Sange, in the association of devotees who have great attraction for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in their association, and the Dham, in their association, you borrow their eyes of affection for the Dham and see through their eyes of affection. And then in the same way we develop eyes of affection for the Dham and the heart of affection for the Dham. And then we eventually lose our heart in Vrindavan. So we don't lose our heart in Vrindavan just by wearing a t-shirt which says, I lost my heart in Vrindavan. It is a very good sentiment. We really appreciate. At least that t-shirt should always remind us of our goal. But to lose our heart in Vrindavan has a paddhati. There is a way, there is a means of losing our heart in Vrindavan. And that is Gaura Amar Jesabastane Karalo Brahmana Range Sesabastana Heriboami Pranayi Bakata Sange. So in that way one can lose one's heart in Vrindavan. Then this Mathura Vas becomes a very potent limb if these elements are there. And the fifth element, most potent limb, is not chanting the holy name. He says Harinama Sankirtanam. Harinama Sankirtanam has two meanings. Coming together in the association of devotees and chanting the holy names in great love and affection. That is one understanding. And another meaning of Sankirtanam is Samyak Kirtanam, which means the complete chanting. And the complete chanting means that which is devoid of the 10 offenses to the holy name. So when the holy name is chanted in that way, then it becomes a very potent limb of bhakti. Otherwise, Aparada Yukta Harinam, or Harinam which is chanted without paying attention to removing the offenses, is not very potent. It is actually not very potent. It is not one of the 5 potent limbs. So in this way he describes these 5 limbs, and especially in this context, Sadhu Sangha we are discussing, it must have these 4 elements. Sajatiya Ashe Snigde Sadhu Sangha Swatovare. Then it is very potent. Then such an association is such a contagious. It is more contagious than COVID-19. So COVID-19 has been able to spread not so much actually. When contained, when you quarantine, it will stay there and die. But when you quarantine such devotees, they will not die. Their infection of Krishna consciousness will increase more and more and more and more. And then unable to contain that infection, they will go online and spread that message to everyone. And everyone will get infected. COVID-19 cannot spread through YouTube live. But if you have association of such devotees, the love in their heart due to their mutual nourishment can spread even through internet and all such means. So therefore, this is the next Sadhu Sangha. Then the third stage that comes is Bhajana Kriya. Bhajana Kriya means where in the association of devotees one starts practicing devotional service. So this Bhajana Kriya can be practiced on the level of Nishtha, very steady devotional practice, or Anishtita, unsteady devotional practice. There are 2 stages in which this bhakti can be practices. And in the beginning stage, it is generally unsteady, and there are 6 stages or 6 types of Anishtita bhajan. Rather, these 6 types are in sequential order. So it is generally the stages also of Anishtita bhajan are um, unsteady devotional service. So what are these 6 stages or types? He says Utsahamayi. So Utsahamayi means false confidence. Oh, this bhakti, very easy, I can do it. False confidence. We'll of course discuss each of these stages in little more detail. The second is called as Ghana Tarala. Ghana Tarala means sporadic endeavor, thick and thin practice of bhakti. The third is called as Vyuda Vikalpa, indecision. And the fourth is called as Vishaya Sangara. Vishaya Sangara means struggle with senses. Fifth stage is called as Niyamakshama, inability to uphold the vows. And the sixth stage is called Taranga Rangini, enjoying the facilities offered by bhakti. So, these 6 stages of Anishtita Bhajan is very, very important to understand for various reasons. Because generally we think, oh, I am not, Prabhuji, I have been practicing bhakti for last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, but I don't seem to progress. Devotees feel. They say, why? They say, oh, I don't have any taste for the holy name, I don't have any taste for Bhagavatam, like that they may say. So, their definition of progress is ruchi, taste. Taste for the process is called as ruchi. But before ruchi comes nishta, before nishta comes anartha nivritti, before anartha nivritti comes anishtita bhajana kriya, and within anishtita bhajana kriya there are 6 stages. So if they hear these 6 stages, they will identify, oh, actually I have made some progress. And if I become more sincere, I have already, of these 6 stages, I have fairly crossed 2, 3, 4 stages, and or 5 stages in some cases. And if I endeavor little more harder, I will cross the 6th stage also. Then I can reach Nishta. Then after Nishta, I can reach Ruchi, then Asakti, then Bhava and Prema. It will give them confidence in their practice. So therefore, it is very important to understand these 6 stages within the stage of Anishtita Bhajana Kriya, unsteady devotional service. Even though all these 6 stages are unsteady, but there is a gradation in them. So we will try to discuss these 6 stages. We have about 7 minutes left. I don't want to start this new theme and then I'll have to abruptly end it in between. Because the last few days I have been going overboard, today I will try to compensate for it by ending little early so that tomorrow we can start afresh, starting from the theme of Anishtita Bhajana Kriya. What are the various stages or the types of Anishtita Bhajana Kriya? Very interesting theme. We will discuss this tomorrow. So thank you very much for your patient listening and hoping to see you tomorrow. So tomorrow will be the last session of this part 1, and maybe in a few days time we will again start the part 2 of this same discussion, and hopefully you are getting some benefit through this wonderful presentation by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur ki jai. Shri Madhurya Kadambini ki jai. Hare Krishna.